The Endurance Asia podcast.
And always tell a truthful story if they ever ask. Stop the complaining cause things ain't that bad.
Jeri, Chua, it's very good to be here in your humble abode or your beautiful shop, little red dot running, and to have you join the Endurance Asia podcast.
Yay, super excited. Thanks, Scott.
Yay. I'd like to sort of kick off by how I first came to hear of you, the legend that is Jeri Chua, the living legend. But I listened, I'm an avid podcast to listen to, and it's actually when you were on the Hong Kong Trail Rockers with Vince.
Oh, yes, Vince.
And he did like a 3-part podcast. And I never heard of you before, but I'd lived in Singapore, and I was like, how have I I'd only been here a year, and just hearing your crazy, crazy story, I was just like absolutely blown away. But then, and then reached out to you, I'm sure, along with a load of other people, you got all these Facebook messages from people saying like, oh, I heard these strange people that want to connect. But you actually, I reached out to you about supporting a challenge that I was doing, because I heard of you doing like the Everesting challenge in Singapore. Yeah. And I decided I did it on a bike. It's a bit harder than doing it walking up and down a stairwell. But yeah, we're doing it for charity, and you like donated Tailwind support. I'm representing Tailwind today.
Go
as
Tailwind.
Well. Go Tailwind. But yeah, I was blown away with how like accessible and humble you were, and it's a real delight to sit down with you here today and like share your story again. So thanks for the invite. With that, like, I'd like to kick off with finding out like where did it all start for you, Jeri? We're in your shop sitting here, and I'm looking up, and there's a tri bike which looks like it's from about 1972 or something.
Well, that would be before my time, but yes, I kind of ran out of space in my house for stuff like my toys, so some of them come into here. I started in 1993, like properly started. So I was in doing my degree in physical education. And so being surrounded by all these guys from all different walks of life, they all played different sports. My classmates were netballers and footballers, and, some were runners and all sorts of other things. And we just got stuck into a lot of different things. And the way it actually started right from the beginning was we all attended a Tiger Balm massage course. And the guy doing the massage course, they needed masseuse therapists at different sporting events. This is in 1993. Yeah. So he's got like these young PE students who are all eager to do stuff. And so we got to go to a lot of different events and do some massage therapy for them. And one of the first events we went to was a triathlon. I have no idea which triathlon this was. I cannot remember. All I remember is looking around thinking, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I want to do this. And I was so excited. And so I asked my classmates and my friends, and I was like, sign me up for the next one. So that was my very first triathlon, that one coming up that they signed me up for. And I didn't know that it was the ABC, this was ABC Guinness Stout, right? This was the days when beer still sponsored the races. It was awesome. So the ABC...
It's like Marlboro, sponsoring an ultramarathon or something, isn't it?
Exactly. But it was awesome. So
isn't it Courtney DeWater talks about like she drinks beer halfway along a trail race? You never know. It might be good fuel,
Actually, it's pretty good fuel, I reckon, apart from the alcohol.
Yeah, lose the alcohol.
But so the ABC Stout International Triathlon in Singapore was a long distance triathlon, and I didn't know this. I had no clue of distances at the time because I hardly ran. I did a little bit of running, but we just did stuff that the PE course got us to do, and we were just active in general. Yeah. And so I did this, I actually don't remember the exact distances now. I can probably look it up, but it was probably something like a 70.3 or close enough. Yeah. And so that was my first triathlon.
That would have been way before like Ironman concept even came up.
Right? No, that was, Ironman was around.
It was around then already.
Yeah. But by the time I did, Ironman was 1968.
Was it really?
Nope, 1978, first Ironman.
There you go.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that.
1978.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was the official first one in Kona.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. I've got so much to learn about triathlon.
Oh, it's awesome, but yeah.
So, how long did you give you before you'd signed up for what you think was a 70.3?
I don't remember. Maybe a couple of months, or maybe a month or so. And I just literally went straight into it. I borrowed a bike, crashed it, and on my
You
first
crashed.
ride, yeah.
You fell over. You hurt.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah, that was just, you know,
The
a
side of things
portent
to
of
come.
what was to come. Absolutely, because it had drop handlebars, and I was just like, guys, I'm really off balance here and wobbling all over the place, and went straight into the ditch. But kind of got the hang of it, and really, really enjoyed it. So after that was, you know, just a slew of triathlons. Whatever I could find, I signed up for. And 98 was my first Ironman. And before that, I was, you know, kind of got into the national team for triathlon because actually there weren't that many people doing it anyway. This was way back when, you know, the guys used to say policemen still wore shorts. Yeah, right. But it was good fun. It was one of those, like, you know, when a sport's starting out, it's a small community and everyone kind of knows everyone else. You know, you borrow wheels and you have great stories and they all cheer you on and you know everyone. And I love that sort of feeling and that community.
Yeah.
And so without knowing much more, I just thought, everyone's talking about Ironman, so I guess, you know, this is what you've got to aim for, right?
And the national one was Olympic distance.
Yes, Olympic distance. So I did a few races in Southeast Asia as part of the national Southeast Asia circuit.
And were you a sponsored athlete then, or like how did it work? Did you get sort of donations from the government or something? Were you funded in any way?
Well, kind of. I think it's such a long time ago, to be honest. But I remember I had some sponsorship from right at the start, Oakley and Polar and Adidas. Actually, Adidas for some reason decided to sponsor me as a triathlete, and it was quite bizarre because of course they didn't have any super specific stuff, but it was great, you know, the running shoes and the running kit, and they were really, really nice to me. So I did have some sponsorship then. I went to so I decided, right, gonna do Ironman 1998, and the plan was qualify, so be the first Singaporean to actually qualify for Ironman Kona, because before there's this lottery that you can enter, and I think you pay we used to pay maybe $100 US or $300 US, and you'd be put in the lottery, and because not many people come from Singapore, you got a good chance of getting in. Yeah. And so I thought, okay, I want to do it the proper way.
And the proper way is to place, or do you have to podium in an age group?
You have to, yes, probably. It depends. So the slots are usually on a roll down. If not, so the first place will get a slot, and if the first place doesn't want it, it'll roll down. And it depends on the men's and women's field, how it's spread out. Mind you, this was a while ago as well. Things have changed very slightly. But so the plan was I'd do the first Ironman on the circuit, and there weren't that many back then. And it was Ironman New Zealand when it was still in Auckland. So it's not even Taupo, it's Auckland. And I had a great race. It was crazy. It was like all over the place. The swim was super rough. It was my first wetsuit swim. There was hail on the bike. And I remember riding along going, ow, what is this? And the guy riding next to me goes, it's hail. I was like, what? And then bright sunshine on the run, which was like, yay. So I finished really well. I won my age group. And so I got a slot for Hawaii. And so that would be my second Ironman that same year.
And so was that earlier in the calendar year then,
yes.
the New Zealand one?
Yeah,
so it would have been their summer. And
New Zealand was in March, I believe, at the time. And then Hawaii was in October.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
And so what did you do in between?
I actually trained too hard. And I actually burnt out when I got to Kona. And I was just, at the time, I had no concept of overtraining or, you know, you just do it. And I didn't realize my brain was just fried. And I didn't have a great race. I ended up on an IV. I finished it in not a great time, like 14 hours something. I remember passing a friend on the bike course, and he sat down and took a Big Mac out of his drop bag or something. I remember that very vividly. And I was just like, oh.
He had a Big Mac on Big Mac in his drop bag.
Yeah, it means that he would have had to put it in the night before as well. Oh. But it's crazy things like that. And I just remember being so, like, struggling so much on the bike and the run, which wasn't normal for me. And I finished, not in my best time, of course, but I'm glad I finished it.
Yeah.
And it was a good experience for me. At the time, I was maybe a bit young.
I mean, so that was your first foray into endurance sports. Like, normally you hear a lot of people like it's their lifetime goal to make it to Kona. Like, I know a lady I work with, her husband's just he's a management consultant for Accenture. He's like really high. He's just taken a year out to train to get to Kona.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And so to do that as like to get there in your first ever year of doing endurance sports. That's
no,
crazy.
that wasn't my first year. So I started triathlon in 93.
Okay, it was the first year of doing Ironman,
yeah,
right?
it's the first year of doing Ironman.
Got you.
So at New Zealand, that was also my first marathon. I had no idea. I'd never run further than that. I was like, oh, okay, great. And then somebody said, is that your first marathon as well? I was like, oh, yeah. But it didn't occur to me. I wasn't a road runner.
Yeah.
I just did stuff. Like, people would say, hey, there's a biathlon going on this weekend. Want to join? I'm like, sure. So yeah, you just hopped on.
You've got one of those like bendy arms, Jeri. I call her bendy. Like, it's easy to twist.
Yes,
Go, do you
I'm
want to
very
do this?
easy.
Like,
I think I have major FOMO sometimes. So I'm just like, oh, don't leave me out. I want to do it.
But then I can imagine that ends up you just like stacking your diary too much.
Yeah,
right?
I kind of do that.
How did you overtrain? So did you have a coach at that time? You must have if you were training like racing for Singapore.
Well, yeah, we had a coach for the national team, but at the time when I was doing the Ironman training, I didn't have a coach per se. So we would do some swim training with the Chinese coach who was part of the Triathlon Association team, and it was brutal swim training, but I needed it. My swim is the worst leg for me. And then in the bike and run, I had a friend who was training me or giving me some help with training. So he devised this program for Ironman training that he was like, okay, if you do these sessions as the bare minimum, you should be able to get through it. This was because I was still in school at the time, and I remember waking up at, I'd go 3 o'clock for a ride, finish at 7 o'clock, then ride to school for lectures.
Sorry, that's in the morning.
Yeah,
you would wake up at 3.
Yeah,
I was thinking like
exactly.
in the afternoon. So you woke up at 3 a.m. Okay.
Yeah, so it's no wonder, right? But I was just like, okay, I've been given this, so I got to do it. And I just ran out of steam.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the thing that comes to my mind there is just sleep, right? I've been doing a lot of research about the importance of sleep, and it's just so critical to your overall well-being, isn't it? So I doubt at that stage, if you're waking up at 3 a.m. to go riding every morning, that you were getting much sleep.
I'm probably one of the worst people for sleep. I advocate it like mad, definitely sleep is so important, but I spent probably the last 7 or 8 years having 4 hours sleep a night, just because, and it's catching up with me. Yeah, I totally feel it now. Now I try and make time to sleep, but it just still feels like I'm wasting time sleeping because there's so many other things that I got to do.
As a business owner, I'm sure that's the case.
Oh, yeah.
But I just listened to a podcast recently by Rhonda Patrick. Have you heard of Rhonda Patrick? And she had this guy on called Walker. He's written a book on sleep, but it was one of the most enlightening podcasts I listened to. It's like 2 hours of him talking about the importance, and we all know it's important, but then actually talking about tactical things to be able to help you sleep better.
Okay.
And one of them that I learned, which I've put in now, is actually, I don't know if you've got one, but I have a sauna. We've got a sauna at our condo, and so I go and have like a hot bath and sauna before bed. So if you heighten your body temperature, and then automatically you get out, your body cools down, and actually cooling the extremities, your feet and your hands, actually helps you go to sleep. I'm obviously not a doctor, but I'm just reciting it. But are there any tactics that you've tried to be able to help improve your sleep?
Yes. So initially, and I've had a long practice of this, I fall asleep very easily, actually. So I can be on any moving vehicle. I know my first date with my ex-husband, honestly, I fell asleep in the car while we were driving to the venue that we were going to and I was like, oops. So he
I'm
apparently,
surprised you got a second date
I
after
know. I must have really charmed him with my snoring. Gosh. But no, I fall asleep really easily. And I think for me, the benefit is that, I don't know about now, but before, I used to get very good quality sleep in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
You know, some people take a long time to get into good REM sleep.
Yeah.
And
That's
that's
rapid
when,
eye movement.
Yes,
isn't
rapid
it?
eye movement. And when you dream, when your eyes, your eyelids are flickering almost under your eyelids, your eyes are moving. That's kind of how you tell. That's why they call it rapid eye movement, I believe. But when you're in that state, that's when your brain is the most relaxed, and that when that's when all the recovery processes start to really happen. Your body starts to rebuild. You know, all the good stuff starts to happen. And people in an 8-hour stretch of sleep, a lot of them don't manage to get more than 2 or 3 hours of good REM sleep. And I think, so if I sleep for 4 hours, I usually get a good 2 to 3 hours REM sleep.
Yeah.
So that's almost the same as someone
having a
sleeping
7-hour sleep,
yeah.
but then so the difference being, because you go into like a deep sleep,
Yeah.
or you have like the shallow sleep where you're like pretty much
so
awake.
I go into deep sleep very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So if I'm on a bus, for example, and I've got an hour's journey, I'm dead to the world till I need to get off at my stop usually.
The other one thing they talked about on there is obviously devices. We know, like, we just
Oh,
attach
yeah.
to them
I'm terrible with
constantly,
that.
but it's so hard not to go to bed and check stuff on your phone before going to bed. But
Yes.
because you think, especially you as running your own business, it's like,
Yes.
but I need to get back to them, or otherwise the whole world will come crashing down. It won't.
Yeah.
It'll still be there in the morning.
Yeah. So that's something that I've had to slowly learn, and I'm still trying to learn it. It's a behavior that, you can put your phone down. You can put it away, turn it over, or turn it off even for, say, an hour or 2 hours. And I think for me, especially before sleep, if I am looking at my phone, then the brain starts going and it doesn't shut down quickly enough. So if I'm in a race, I try and clear my thoughts, as much as possible before I'm about to take a quick nap or, a dirt nap or something, because otherwise your brain's still going, you can't relax.
Thinking about the next checkpoint, the next part of it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So putting devices away is something that I'm still trying to practice.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so hard, isn't it?
No, not there yet.
The other thing is, so they did some research on this podcast that it's worth listening to, that it's all about people that read an hour before bed or use
Yeah.
a device an hour
Yeah.
before, and the differences were just crazy. Like, it's so one thing I try and do is obviously put the phone down, but then read. Or actually, and the trouble is, I always go to bed listening to podcasts. So I'll try and read, and I'll put my podcast on, and I'll time it for 10 or 15 minutes, and just hearing, with my headphones in, sort of really quiet, but someone talking gets me to sleep.
So 2 things that I find really help me sleep. One is the recovery system's active compression. I know. It's awesome. So,
This one here?
Yeah, that one. So when I put my legs into it, it's so relaxing that almost, because you have to be lying down anyway, that's the best position for you to be in. And I always fall asleep when I'm on it, and I'll wake up half an hour later. Either I'll pop it back on and for another 30 minutes, or I'll unzip and then roll over and go back to sleep.
Yeah.
But I find that's really good for me. The other thing is what you were saying about reading. So at home, we're building our book wall, and there's all these awesome books. I love reading, but I just, how I just don't have time. And so I have a pile of books next to my bed now that I try and get to. And I read fast, so it's not a problem, but it's just making that time. And I think learning to make that time is really, really important. It's just not so easy.
Yeah. I've like literally had to give up my job so I can get through my stuff.
I've seen your posts.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I've got too many books to read, too much stuff to do. I have to give it up. But yeah, I'm like, what are you reading at the moment? I was going to ask a question I had for later, but I'm interested.
So at the moment, I am reading this book called Endurance.
It's in my stack.
Yeah. I think it's written by A.A. Lansing on the Shackleton journey.
Yes.
Yes. And I also have Alex Hutchinson's Endurance. I forget. It's
That's like the two literally in my stack.
It's a long title, and I forget.
The Curious Mind of the Endurance.
It's
in my book list here once.
The curiously elastic properties of the mind or something to do with endurance. And I know for nowadays, I cannot remember details as well as I can. And I put it down to age.
No, it is the most forgettable title of a book
long.
ever. But
it's super long. I just finished reading North by Scott Jurek. And,
okay.
Yeah, and a couple of others. So the theme is there at the moment. I'm still on the ultra and endurance books, and they're really inspiring in that you get that insight to, what people are doing, and you just think, I don't think I could do that. And then you think, oh yeah, maybe I can. And you get so excited with stuff. Yeah. I do anyway.
Yeah. There are there are two really good book recommendations. So yeah, back to your so triathlon. So you did Kona 98, and it sounds like you're a bit disappointed with your performance there, but you must have been proud to have finished Kona, though, right?
I was delighted to have finished because it felt like such an effort, that one.
Yeah.
So that also was the year that after Kona, I moved to the UK to do my master's in exercise and nutrition science. And so after that, I was in the UK for pretty much the next 12 years. And so I did another couple of triathlons a couple of Ironmans after that. My fastest one was in Austria, the third one that I did. And then one more in Langkawi. And I kind of just, gave up after that just because, to be honest, training in the UK is not fun.
It's miserable,
it is cold, and wet. And I just thought, I need to do something else. And I took up kite surfing. Well, I lived in the northwest, southwest.
Ah,
in
okay, Cornwall. Nice.
Yeah, and so kite surfing was great, but it still wasn't warm.
Yeah.
And so in 2010, my marriage had fallen apart by then. We had a good 10 years, and it wasn't meant to be. So I came back to Singapore to start again. It was a really difficult time then. But just before I came back in 2009, I discovered trail running. I'd never been trail running much before that.
So all of the stuff you'd done before was all because obviously triathlons is all on road the whole time, or in the water, obviously. But you hadn't been on the outdoors at all?
No. So we went for hikes, and because I lived in Cornwall, it's kind of you do go for hikes and you do go for little runs, but they were all on just the coast path, sort of. Yeah. And I never really got into running properly. I'd just go from my house, out somewhere and then come back again. And I decided to join a running club, which is something that I've never, ever done before. And this local running club. In Cornwall, my Sinostal running club. And they were fantastic. They were absolutely lovely. It's so welcoming. And I remember some of the guys in the club were ultra runners, and that's where I first heard about ultra running. Before, it never occurred to me. I didn't even know it was a thing. And they took me, as part of the club, I did my first half marathon on the trail, which I absolutely loved. I remember it was the Redruth half marathon. I didn't realize it was on trail. When I came back, I was like, whoa, that was interesting. Tough. and like ups and downs. You know, we don't have that in Singapore, and I really never really trained to run up and down anything. And they were talking about doing things like the Thames Grand Union Canal or the Thames Canal Trail.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, things like 100 miles. And I was like, in the first place, I didn't know how far 100 miles was. And they said, oh, it's about 160 kilometers. I'm like, what? Are you kidding? He's like, you run that far running 10 miles? And I'm just like, I'm dead. And so I was in complete awe and super intrigued, but not because I wanted to do it. I was just super intrigued. And there was an event. Somehow I managed to convince myself to sign up for my first ultra, the Classic Quarter, and Endurance Life Classic Quarter. That's what it was called. So I think it was 45 miles on the coast path. I remember from Lizard to Land's End. It was incredible. It was an amazing day. I learned so much because I was going like a crazy person at the start and like bombing up and down hills and, you know, the coast path, and it was an incredible day and blew my quads up completely. So I went from like first place to third place to sixth place because I was walking backwards in the end. That last 12 miles I thought it took forever. But I think that was the beginning of the end.
You were hooked from there. That was 2009, was it?
That was 2009. It must have taken me 3 days before I could climb up and down my stairs normally.
So you didn't do any specific training for it really on?
No, not much specific training. I remember doing some long runs, but that was pretty much it. So that was 2009, and in that time between, because obviously from doing triathlons, you did a couple of triathlons in the UK. Yeah. But when you were studying for your masters, were you just like keeping fit and joining the running club? But you weren't really doing too many sort of races as such in that time. Yeah, no. So I didn't do that much. I did maybe a few local races or small triathlons. Like I remember doing the Bath triathlon and one in sort of Wadebridge and Foy, but those are sort of little local towns, you know. And there's the Mevagissey Festival triathlon, which literally you finish in 13 minutes. But it's painful. It's a painful 13 minutes. Yeah, you swim from one side of the harbour across to the other. You should run up the Mevagissey hill and cycle back, or cycle up the hill and run back down.
It sounds to me like obviously splitting up with your husband after being with him 10 years, like that seems, I'm looking through your calendar of like your career in ultra running, and that seemed like a real like pivotal time in your life. That like we talked about books that we read recently. I've just finished reading The Obstacle is the Way, and it's around turning adversity into advantage. And it's really interesting, like hearing stories about when, you know, people come up against tough times in their life and they're able to like channel that grief, channel that hard stuff into something positive and like push that energy into something positive. Would you say that was that happened for you? Or?
Yes. So, and I don't tell a lot of people this, but I have no problem actually speaking about it. When I was between 2006 and 2009, I think I was quite severely depressed, and that was one of the motivators for joining the running club, because I needed to get out of, you know, this black hole that I felt I was in. And it was a pretty severe depression, but the fact that I didn't want to take any drugs or see anyone, you know, it just felt like it wasn't going to work for me. And so I had to figure out how to make myself better. And running was the first step for me to try and pull myself out of it. It may or may not have been the right decision, but I think it was for me. I mean, the regularity, the support from no one knew that I was depressed. They just knew that, you know, I needed to run for whatever reason. And we all have reasons to run, right? And so that really helped, especially coming back to Singapore when I had to start from literally ground zero again. It was very hard, but I had then support from my family and friends, and this depression started to go away, and the more I ran, the less depressed I felt, and I thought that's great, so I'm just going to run more. And I think it gave me a lot of impetus to get out and do stuff that I felt would challenge me personally. And that's a lot of so I do a lot of things without thinking it through properly first. Like I remember, so I came back in 2010, and I did my first ultra in 2009. And my second ultra was 100 kilometers. And my third ultra was 100 miles. And they're both in the same year within, 2 months of each other.
It kind of reminds me of like speaking to Andre, like, and his was around the same sort of time,
yes,
Andre Bloomberg,
yes.
and then he just went from like not running at all to like doing the 5 North Face 100Ks in like one season. It's like, how'd you go from nothing to that?
That's where I met Andre. So
it was, okay.
Yeah, that my first 100K was in Singapore. It's the North Face 100. And I met Andre at that race.
And that was his first as well.
Exactly.
Oh,
so
that's crazy.
We both did the same race. And it was funny because I was doing it. I had no idea of how to pace myself. Absolutely clueless. So I had this massive pack of food and everything I thought I needed. My bag must have weighed, 6 kilos or something for a 2-loop 100K in Singapore. And Andre and Paper, so Paper was taking pictures, and Andre was running, and Andre was behind me the whole time up until maybe 14 Ks to the finish. And he passed me, looking strong, and I was just wiped out by then because I'd run the first 50K with the Chinese international runner, and she'd been invited because she'd won North Face Beijing, and she'd come and she was like, "Come on, we'll run together." I'm like, "Okay." I think we did the first loop so the first 50Ks in under 5 hours. And then my next 50K, I was like, you go ahead because
That's like the worst thing you can do. It's like, I'm just going to follow the fastest runner. That's a great idea for my first 100K.
Yeah. No, we had fun though. It was like we were chatting the whole way, and she thought that she was out of the top 3 because there weren't any male-female podiums then. It was just literally overall podium.
Yeah.
So she thought she was out of the top 3. So she said, well, I'm not in the top 3 now, and I think they're too far to catch. Those guys went pretty fast. So why don't we just run together? And I was like, sure. And I felt fine running with her for the first 50K. It's only the second 50K that I thought, I'm not going to be able to keep this up for the same distance. And so Andre pipped me at the end and came in third, I believe.
Yeah, he podiumed on his first 100.
Absolutely.
Where did you finish on that one?
Fourth, just
you
behind
just
Andre.
behind him. Brilliant.
Yeah, no, it was good fun.
Oh, loop races are horrible. I hate like that. The second loop's all because you just know what's coming the whole way.
No, I didn't even know that there was a halfway point where we could pick up food and drink and everything. I think I ran right past it.
You didn't even look at the course map beforehand. You just turned up.
No, I'm terrible with stuff like that. Absolutely horrific. But it's because of that first ultra, and I think I had 3 UTMB points from that first ultra that I didn't know what UTMB was. And the guys, just like Ironman Kona, right? Ironman Hawaii is like the race that you need to aim for. So the guys are all talking about UTMB, and I'm like, okay, so I've got 3 points. I should try and get to this UTMB. And at the time, you only needed 7 points, I think. And so I had to find a race that had another 4 points that would get me in, or that would allow me to register. And so I found this 100-miler in Australia, the Great North Walks. And so I just dived right in. And that was another massive lesson. Absolutely hilarious, but such good fun. And I really, really enjoyed it.
Whereabouts in Australia is that one?
That's in Sydney. So it's
along North Shore, is it?
Yes. So the Great North Walk's actually a long trail from, I believe, Brisbane to Sydney. Okay. And so they take a section of that. So we start
not along
a
the
little
coast,
further
though,
out.
so on the
along the coast-ish,
okay.
yeah. So we started kind of halfway up and then made our way back down to Sydney.
Yeah. Is it still a race now?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, GNW 100. So they have the 100K and the 100 miler. So that's their fun run and the real race.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good fun. I was in so much pain at some points of that one. It was hilarious.
And did that give you enough points for UTMB
It did.
then?
That was a 4-point race, so I got enough points. That was also my first encounter with chafing, strangely enough. I remember going past 100 Ks and thinking, this is further than I've ever been before. And then thinking, I'm not sure if I can carry on because I'm so chafed from my shorts. The liner of my shorts, I don't know what was going on because they were fine in the 100K. But, you know, it's different conditions and all sorts. And I was chafed so badly. I had to borrow a scissors, cut the liner out of my shorts before I could carry on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You didn't have gurney goo back then?
No, we didn't. Exactly. I didn't know anything like that. I think in the first 10Ks, I fell into a river as well, like off a small cliff into a river.
You fell over, Jeri. No chance. I can't believe it.
Yeah. I know. No, it's just good. It's good fun. No scars, no proof, right? I should learn to look where I'm going a bit more.
So you did UTMB the following year?
Yes. So I qualified, got in, got the ballot. I don't think there were many taking part in those days.
Yeah, once again, it's mental. Like the first year that you do, like sometimes your lifetime career as a triathlete is to get to Kona, and you did that in your first year, and then you get to UTMB in your first year. That's pretty crazy. What do you think? What made you want? Is it as soon as you heard that there was like the pinnacle, I need to get there, or what was it that?
Yeah, no, you know, I don't recall being super excited about UTMB in the way people are now. And I didn't know hardly anything about it. I just knew that it was in relation to, say, Ironman Kona. That's what you would look to do in the ultra running world. And all guys were talking about it. And they said, you know, you've got points, so you shouldn't let it go to waste. And so this is how I do stuff. I don't really know what I'm letting myself in for. I just literally sign up and hope for the best, which it was good. It was a good experience again. It was crazy. There's all sorts of crazy stories all the time, but you know, that's half the fun, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you've like got a ridiculous, from there, you've just, you know, knocked off some of the toughest racing around the world, from Tour de Jean to Four Trails to, what would you say was actually your, in your trail running career, your proudest achievement?
My last race, I think. To be honest,
The Malay?
not.
No.
No, I'm not so.
Coast to Kosci or?
Yeah, there was
that your last
Kosci.
one?
No, that wasn't. I don't feel like super proud as such, but I feel like with the bigger races, especially like Tour de Jean, the Gobi 400, Coast to Coast in Malaysia, and even ones that I haven't finished, like the Anzac Ultra, I DNF that one. It's not so much pride in what I've done, but I just think I really enjoyed the challenge and the experience that I take away from it. It's just, I want more. And so it's always the last race that you do. It doesn't matter, or that I do, it doesn't matter quite so much if it's the longest race or it's a short one that, you know, you just go and try and do a fast 50K or something. I just really, really enjoy racing. Don't enjoy the training so much, but racing is good. Yeah.
And is it like the dopamine effect of actually that sense of like achievement or is it the like just the buzz, the adrenaline you get from when you're doing the race? Or
I think you know what. So I don't come across as such, but I am an introvert. I'd rather spend time by myself, you know, quietly, than being out there and talking all the time and you know, being life of the party. But on the trails, it's slightly different. I like feeling strong on the trail when I'm racing and being able to encourage other people, getting encouragement from other people. And I think the main thing that spurs me on is it's a lot simpler than, feeling pride in your achievements or anything like that. It just, I like being out there for long enough so that it strips everything back to just the pure, simple aspects of just being out there and pushing yourself. Because that's all it is. You just think there will be a point where it's so raw. It's just, you just keep moving forward, one step at a time. That it's a finite, length of suffering or pleasure or whatever it is you're feeling at the time. But I like it because everything else falls away. All of the, little details that you worry about.
It gives real perspective.
Yeah.
On everything. I think, you talked about mental illness, and I think that running, a lot of people find solace in running because it really does put things into perspective and make some of the biggest challenges you're facing, gives them complete insignificance and actually puts them in, it makes you realise how unimportant they are. And I think the proudest achievement thing is it's a difficult question. I think when people become if they're doing it for ego or pride, then sometimes it can. I always say that pride comes before a fall, and if you're and I've done it myself. I've been in a race and I've been near the front of a race and thinking, actually, I'm probably going to do really well here, and then I'll take a wrong turn and go 5k in the wrong direction. I'm holding that back. But at the same time, I think there is, you've been so successful that there must be things you look back on and go, that one was pretty good.
Well, if I had to pick, I think probably Tailwind, my first, long race.
Ultra,
so that was 200, a little over 200 miles.
330, is it?
330. And that was such an incredible experience. I actually don't know. I think I got round by literally the hair of my teeth. I had so many points in that race where...
Is that the race where you saw someone fall off the side of a cliff?
Yes.
I remember hearing that you say this story on a previous podcast, but I don't know if you want to share again. And I was just what the fuck?
Well, so this was my first ever super long race, and it actually came about because a friend of mine, he's Italian, lives in Cornwall, grew up there. He's a ski instructor, and it was his Italian way of saying things, I think, that kind of spurred it, because he said, UTMB, you did this? And then he said, Tailwind, this one, you cannot. And I was like, what do you mean I cannot?
I love it. In fact, actually, I remember you, sorry to go on a side point, but I remember you said to me when I was thinking of doing the Everesting, and I wanted to get the record on it, and you're like, I don't think you'll be able to do it. I was speaking to and I'm like, right, Jeri says I can't do it. I'm going to prove it wrong. And I did, but
no,
so
absolutely.
Someone telling you can't do something is just like fuel to the fire, isn't it?
But when I first looked at the details, I was just like, oh no, he's right. I'm not doing that. And it was, I think, one day I was just looking at the website again, and I thought, we'll just put our names in, or my name in, and we'll see how it goes. And when I got in, I was just like, well, here goes nothing. But getting there and doing that first hike, the day before, I did a recce hike, and I just thought, uh-oh, I'm in so much trouble here. This is not
Dolomites?
good.
Whereabouts is it?
It's so you start in Cornwall, and you go around, and you're in the foothills of the four big mountains. So it's Monte Bianco, which is Mont Blanc, Gran Paradiso, Monte Rosa, and the Matterhorn.
And you can see those?
You can see them from behind. So
obviously, if the weather's okay and it's not at night.
But it was absolutely incredible. But that first day, so we start off at maybe 8 in the morning. And by 8 at night, the weather's changed. There's sleet and there's horrible rain and wind, and we're climbing up this thing called Col du Crozati. And it's horrible. It just looks like one of those sets from a horror movie, like Dracula or something. It's just really slaty, sort of.
Almost like an avalanche of rocks has come
it's like
down.
scree fields, and it's that horrible slick rock, like very jagged stuff. And people are really, it's dark. You see kind of headlamps, and people are just going head down. And I was just thinking, I just need to get over the top of this thing, right? And we should have an aid station at the top, and if not aid station, but like a checkpoint at the top, dying for a hot drink because it's freezing, and then bomb down to the aid station on the other side. And I get to the top, and I'm like, yes, there's nobody at the top. So I think, okay, no hot tea, just keep moving. And so I start running, and this is 13 hours into the event already. So you still kind of have some energy, and because we're going downhill, this one's reasonably runnable. There's a very distinct trail. So I start running downhill, and I catch up to this chap who's running. He's actually moving quite slowly in front of me, and I'm thinking, yes, going to catch someone, And he's about 6 feet in front of me before he suddenly takes a step to the left, like literally turns to the left, takes a step, and falls off the cliff. And I'm screaming my head off. I go to the edge, and it's this very slippery grass slope for maybe 100 meters, and then, or maybe less than that, and then it's just scree field down there. So I see his hat and his poles just on the edge of the grass, and he's gone all the way down there. So he's maybe fallen.
You could see him still.
Yeah, I could see him, but it was quite far away. So he'd fallen, I reckon, 150 to 200 meters down.
What time of day was it?
This is about 9 p.m.
Okay, so it's dark. It's
dark, yeah. And so there's so many things going through my head, and I'm not really like, what do I do now? So for some reason, I thought it was really important that I try and get his hat and poles. Couldn't quite reach the hat because that was quite far away. And I was like, I'm not risking that. So I grabbed the poles because I thought, if he's broken something, the poles will really help, right? And he's gone down at an angle to, like, perpendicular to the trail. But in order to get down to where he is, I've got to run down the trail round, and so that's like an extra tangent that you've got to go. And while I'm running down, I catch up to this group, and they've got their hands on each other's shoulders because it's that kind of weather, and they've got their head down, and they're all literally like plowing through like a train on the trail, like walking fast. Yeah. And so I try and grab someone from that group, and I managed to grab the two guys off the end of that group, one is a Chinese guy and one is an Italian guy. And for some reason, the rest of the group doesn't come with us, but those two come with me. And we find the chap who's fallen down, and it was horrible. He was lying like face up in a pool of blood. He's conscious, but he's hit his head and God knows what else. We're trying to call emergency services, and mine's the only phone that works because I'm on roaming. Yeah. So I can call using different networks, and none of them can because they've not got any signal. So lucky the Italian guy's there and
talks Italian.
Yeah, he spoke Italian because Tour de Géants is not something where English is so prevalent. And so we're there with him, wrapping emergency blankets around him, trying not to move him, making sure that he's at least conscious, and trying to get emergency services to come and get him. With the weather, no helicopter. So the medics and the doctors have got to hike up the mountain to find us. And so this is something that, I had no idea. I was just like, what on earth is going on now? The two guys who came with me, they had to leave because they were freezing. And I could see that. for me, it's probably adrenaline, and I was wearing everything. Like I probably had 6 layers on, being Singaporean. So I stayed with the guy while they went off and tried to get some help. And it was pretty bleak, to be honest. I know.
Jeri, that's great. I remember, hearing you tell the story before. And how long did you have to wait? How long did you wait with him for?
I think in total, it must have been, I was with him for over 2 hours.
Yeah.
It took, so every half an hour or so, I'd be like blowing my whistle and, waving my
Your
flashlight and everything. And halfway through, there were 2 guys who came. So another Italian guy and one other. And the Italian guy, Andrea, stayed with me the second half. So I was alone with him in total, maybe 45 minutes to an hour. And then I had some company after. And we just tried keeping him
Was he able
conscious.
to speak at that point? Or
He was. It was really hard to understand what he was saying. But then he was speaking in Mandarin.
Yeah.
His face was completely swollen,
Yeah.
so you could hardly tell like what he looked like even. But we, in the end, I worked out that he was Chinese, so I could speak to him in Mandarin, and we just tried to talk to him and comfort him because I remember him saying, it really hurts, it really hurts.
Did you have any painkillers or anything? You could give him
No,
while
but
they-
I don't think we
Not
could have
much
given
help.
him anything really.
Yeah, you got-
Because we needed to keep him alive and
Yeah.
like awake. That's the only thought in my head. I mean, he was breathing.
Yeah.
He was still speaking, and he could say who he was and what he was doing, like just about. So we were just thinking, emergency services, hurry up, the paramedics. And the first guys who came, they had a tent, but they couldn't put it down where we were because
the
it
side
was
of a mountain.
so we had to actually pick him up and move him into the tent, which was, I don't know, 20 meters away. But that was a long 20 meters when you're
Carrying a
tired and carrying somebody and
heavy
it's
weight.
slippery rock. But when we picked him up, he actually moved his head on his own because I thought he'd broken his back, and I was really, really worried that paralyzed for life or something. And we just wrapped him up in emergency blankets and just tried to keep him warm. So when they put him in that tent, they said to us, "Okay, you can go now." And it's suddenly like, shit, what do we do now? What happens next? So Andrea and I ran down towards the checkpoint, and we met another couple of doctors and paramedics hiking up. So then we understood, like, they had no choice. They had to just hike up the mountain. That's why it
Yeah.
took them so long. And we got down to the checkpoint, and we just like we'd seen a ghost.
Just in shock, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I had no idea what to do next at that point in time. I just
and-
needed a hot drink.
Yeah. How long did it take you to make the decision to carry on?
Not that long actually. So I was very lucky. I had a friend who had just done the TDS in Mont Blanc and said, "I'm going to come and watch the start of the race." And so he did. And then he decided that he was going to support me, but he didn't actually say he was going to support me. So he turned up at that first checkpoint. And that was literally the first checkpoint.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What are you doing here?" And he was like, "Well, I thought come, see, I might follow you around for a few more checkpoints." And I was just like, "No!" The whole story of like crying and everything. And he was like, "Right, okay, so why don't you just get out there and carry on, okay, and get to the next checkpoint, and we'll see what happens, okay."
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Crazy story. And yeah, you obviously you wouldn't. That didn't affect any of the cutoffs and everything. You were okay making the rest of the cutoffs of the race.
The cutoffs were fine. It was more the next day when I saw some of the other runners, and because the Chinese runners knew what had happened by then,
Yeah.
and one of them told me that he'd passed away. And that was another, like, in the middle of the mountain, I literally just sat down and went, shit, what do I do now? Do I carry on? Do I stop out of respect? Do I what? And I just thought, well, this is something that could happen to any of us, right?
Yeah.
You sign on the dotted line saying you're not, the race is not responsible for anything, and you think, if it happened to me, I'd want people to carry on because it shouldn't stop you.
Yeah. Oh, we could go down a whole like
No, I
morbid
know,
route
I know.
around this, because actually I've had a couple of instances where I've been in the middle of a race and I've heard of some and sort of carried on. But then also, I remember, this is quite a random one, but we were training for the for Oxford Trail Walker a few years back, and coming through. Actually, we weren't training on the route. We were coming on to, when the noodle shop is. We're actually coming backwards on the map, and coming just where you get onto the road bit, like so it would be in section 6 or so, and we bumped into a guy hanging from like it was just after Halloween. We were running down, and like I was like, what? And I was running the front of the four of us, and I thought it was just like it was Halloween, there's some dummy hanging down, and we ran into like a guy hung him, and like I just freaked out, like to the point that I couldn't run past that point for quite a while.
Oh no!
But yeah, that was quite. But in classic English style, like the way we sort of dealt with it is just like we bantered over WhatsApp and just tried to make light of the situation. And unfortunately, it was a really sad story about a guy that it was a young guy who'd sort of from China who'd gone out there. But yeah, that was freaky stories while being out on the trails. But for you to like carry on in that situation was just. It must have taken a lot of mental toughness to just pick yourself up and carry on.
Yeah.
So I can understand why that would be, to actually get to the end of that would be one of your proudest proudest
that was
moments.
Definitely one of the more memorable ones.
Yeah, I've heard so much about Tour de Geants that I'm like. I remember actually I came in your shop recently, and you were like following your dot watching people, and there was quite a few people from Singapore that finished the last one, right?
Yes, we had 3 from Singapore who finished the last one, and one who didn't quite make it all the way around, but I think he's going back again this year.
Yeah, it's gonna found its way onto my bucket list now.
There you
Thanks
go.
for that, Jeri.
Yeah.
One of my bucket list as well still is the Hong Kong 4 Trails, and and is it still on yours?
Yes, it is, because even though I was the first female survivor, Andre changed the rules promptly the next year, so I finished in something terrible, like 77 hours. And so now you've only got...
That's not terrible, like you finished it, yeah. Which is
but now you've got 75. I think he's lowering that again.
I think he's made it 72.
Has he? Okay, so 72 now. I'd like to have a good crack at doing it in under 60. I mean, Nikki this year was just incredibly inspiring. And she just made it look so easy. Like, she was smiling the whole way, enjoying it. Yeah, definitely going back for another crack.
And actually, just talking about this, because there's been a real emergence of phenomenal female ultra runners, endurance runners, of which, I mean, you've obviously been on the scene for quite a while and one of the best in Asia, but I ran with Nikki for a bit on the 4 Trails, and she was just so strong. Yeah. So unbelievably strong. And but consistently strong. Yeah. You know, it wasn't. We actually the two, we were with this other American dude as well called Ian Seabury, and we were just chatting away, and we made a wrong turning like 12k in, and we went like 2k in the wrong direction, and when we realised, she was like, and she just bombed it back to get on track, and I was like, well, but then when she was back on track, and then was just solid again and just head down and going strong, but. Yeah, I saw her get to the finish line. I think I was like, I was recording it live, and you were like, oh. But she is an amazing athlete, but so humble as well with it.
Super inspired.
Yeah. Who else is there? I mean, obviously you've got Courtney DeWater, who's just superhuman. Yeah, she... You've got
Camille Herron, you know, she's super quick. The 24-hour record as well. Yeah. She just ran 174 miles, 74.98 or something like that, miles in 24 hours.
Wow. Yeah. What's the name of the lady? It escapes me for a second. That she did the one of the big races in the UK, and I'm terrible with names, but she...
Jasmin.
Jasmin, yeah. What's her surname?
Yeah.
Just escaped
No,
you for a
I'm
second,
so bad
but
with
and
stuff
she
like
did it
that.
whilst she was like breastfeeding as well.
She was expressing milk.
Expressing, pumping, dumping.
Yes.
But
Yes.
yeah, it was
Yeah, but she was incredible. So I listened to a podcast. Did you hear it? The Talk Ultra with Ian Corliss. So Ian Corliss had her on a
Okay.
podcast, and she was talking about it. And so she's like, super humble, talking about how she's, dealing with the fame of it all. Like, I can't wait till, somebody else comes on the scene and just takes this limelight away from me. But it's because she's touched beyond the ultra community. It's like the rest of the world suddenly stood up and went, hey, what's going on there? And that's super inspiring. So she's had a lot of media attention, and she's not used to it, but super humble again. And it wasn't a one-hit wonder. She's been doing a lot of consistently good races, and I think she had a record for the Bob Graham round.
Did she really? I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure that was her as well. So, or she gave it a really good go anyway.
Jasmin Paris, that's
yes,
right.
That's
yeah.
it. And so, not surprised, but
She did
incredible.
She did 15:24 Bob Graham round. Wow,
yeah.
that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay, so it
Super
wasn't a
incredible.
one-hit wonder.
No, she's really good.
Yeah.
And good on that sort of terrain as well. So, the spine is just, it's
Very technical.
literally suck it up and stiff upper lip
Yeah.
and get going.
Yeah. And actually, it was really interesting this year. Andre trying to bring in. I don't believe in sort of quotas as such, but just inspiring people to get involved and women to get more involved. And whilst it's difficult to I think same in business. As soon as you put strict quotas, then it sort of changes the dynamic. But and just for the wrong reasons. I think there still needs to be a certain meritocracy in this world, right? But what was very interesting is that the number of women that actually got to finish it's like same or even higher percentage for the 4 trails. And hearing him talk about it is what you'll find is that when women commit to it, they'll do it, whereas blokes will go, I'll do it, and then actually might drop out at some point. But it's they've committed to it, they will see it through. So they're less quick to actually put their application in, but once they've done,
I think also it's just time commitment, and for women there's a lot, I say this, but there's so much else going on. I mean, I don't have kids, but I have my own business, and I think about women with families and children and husbands to deal with, and work life also. There's a lot to deal with without thinking I'm going to commit to an event that is going to take up a massive amount of my time and concentration. So it's a choice, I think, that we don't take lightly. But then again, if you've been invited to do the Hong Kong 4 Trails, you don't take that lightly.
And talking about committing to events, so what's in store for you, Jeri, Chua? What have you committed to? What have you signed your life away for?
Right. So in my usual fashion,
sign up first, think later.
Sign up first, think later. Absolutely. So this challenge called the Triple Crown of 200s kind of piqued my interest. And it's in the US. So the other motivating factor is that my sister lives in San Francisco. One of my sisters lives in San Francisco.
Oh, cool.
It's just had a little baby. And so it's, something where I can combine the two and go visit them. Because I haven't, apart from Ironman Hawaii, I haven't raced in the US before.
Got you. So you haven't done any of the Grand Slams or anything?
No, nothing. And I'm terrible with keeping the my lottery qualifiers in, so Western States and Hard Rock and all that. So I haven't tried to enter once, I think, and then not. But so the Triple Crown of 200s is 3 races, all done by the same race director, Candice Burt from Destination Trail. And they are 3 200-milers in the space of 10 weeks. And the first one is Bigfoot 200, the second one is Tahoe 200, and the third one is the Moab 240. So this is how bad my geography is. I was just having a look to see, you got to think about flights and stuff like that.
Logistics.
Yeah, and so I thought Bigfoot 200 is in Washington State. So that, I thought it was Washington, not Washington State.
I thought it was DC.
Yep, absolutely. And I just
It's
thought,
like the opposite
I know.
ends of...
that's what I did because Roberto's family lives in New York, and I thought, well, this would be an opportunity. Maybe I could come visit. And then before I say anything, maybe I should just see how far it is from the race site itself. And then I looked at it, I was like, that's really far, actually. Let's not say anything.
I think it would be a bit easier if it's around DC. It's a bit flat around there
Yeah.
than it is in Washington
Yeah.
State.
Oh, that's how bad I am with geography. It's appalling, absolutely. But I'm super excited. So it's
When are they? So we're in sort of like
end
March,
of March
April now. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the first week of, actually first, second week of August, then the middle of October, middle of September and the middle of October.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, it's quite good that they're... And do a lot of people do it as like or do all three? Do the Triple Crown? Do the trifecta?
I don't know, actually, because, if you think about doing a 200 miler, for a lot of people, that's like the pinnacle of endurance. They just do the 200 miler and build up to it, like you would say. But there's some of us other people who think, okay, here's the challenge, let's do it. And okay, I might not have trained as much as I could have in the last year or so just building the business. I've really been out of training and racing, and I really miss it. Yeah. And so I thought, well, go big or go home. So I'm going to go big and go home.
Yeah, that's amazing. And how are you thinking about training for? So you've got a coach.
Yes, I've got Andy Dubois from Mont 27, and he's been my coach for a long, long time. And he's trained people for some of these events also. So he's got some experience with them, with the courses. Yeah. And he knows me pretty well. So he knows when to kick me up the ass and when, I don't need so much kicking. At the moment, I need quite a bit more kicking.
Because you've actually... I remember we were supposed to race together, which we're talking about like getting you into like expedition adventure races. The one thing missing from your endurance CV, Jeri, you've got to get involved. God Zone next year, 2020. I just saw the announcement. It's like November 2020. Anyway, you did the coast to Kosci, didn't you?
Yeah.
And got to the finish line standing on the top.
And fell off.
In true Chua style. Let's
absolutely.
fall over and you did. Was it your back you did?
Oh yeah, that was pretty bad actually. So
that was a year ago almost, wasn't it? Just over.
Yeah, so that was Coast to Kosci. They've stopped doing it now.
They didn't get a permit this year, did they?
Yeah, because just road permits and all sorts of things. So I don't know if they'll do it again, which is really sad. It's an awesome race.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I got to the top. Highest point in Australia. So the guys were like, you're going to be the tallest person in Australia for a split second. I'm like, yay! Standing on top
The tallest
there.
and shortest at the same time.
Absolutely.
Jeri.
Got completely disoriented and literally fell off, like doing one of those faith falls going backwards and splat flat on my back. And I was actually really, really lucky in where I fell because that was the only flat spot. Everywhere, and it was cold and I was wearing a pack and I had my headlamp on, so I landed on the battery pack of my headlamp and the flat of my back, luckily. But lucky I had some padding on with a puffer jacket and a few other layers. But literally 2 inches to the side of my spine, there was just this 2-inch metal rod sticking out. And I was just lying there and everybody's like, don't speak. And I was like, can you move? Can you move? I was like, wiggling my toes. I think everything is okay. I need some gummy bears. I was in shock. I was just like
And did
terrified.
the metal spike pierce your back or
No,
like so you
it didn't. I was just really, really lucky. Otherwise, all around elsewhere, it's just very rocky also. And we were like, so the medic's about 1 kilometer down the top of the summit. So as you come up, you pass the medic, Andy, and he's in charge of all the medical, but I don't know, all the medical goings on. So he'll be very strict. So it's our pact to like, let's not tell Andy about this. We're just gonna go down slowly. So I still had 8Ks to go to the finish.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you go up to the top and then you run back down to the Charlotte
Okay.
Pass car park. Yeah.
And how much pain were you in that last 8K?
I was in quite a lot of pain.
Because you were out after that for a few months.
A long time, yeah. I couldn't run across the road even, it was that bad. I couldn't run for a bus or anything. Any bouncing or impact, my back was so sore. I've completely forgotten about that now.
Yeah?
Funny.
Yeah, because obviously you were supposed to race with us. We had to find someone at the last
Yeah,
minute.
sorry about that.
You owe us an expedition adventure race. But so that's like a year. So you were out for 5 or 6 months from that, and
quite a
obviously
long time.
launching the business in that
Yep.
time as well. So you
Yeah.
haven't really trained much for a year, really,
I
have you?
haven't done hardly anything, no.
Yeah, and so now you've signed up for the 3 of the toughest races in the world back to back within 3 months.
Yes.
I mean, the toughest is
Well, maybe
3
not
of the longest
toughest.
ultras
They're
in
long,
the world.
They're long ones, yeah.
And so what's your training going to look like over the next few months? You got 5
I'm
months
guessing,
until the first one.
Yeah, I think more like 4, actually. So lots of back-to-backs, I think, just time on my feet and more consistency, so that with these races, I reckon there's going to be quite a reasonable amount of hiking. And actually, I like the long ones because your speed's not quite so high up there. I mean, I'm not going for a podium or anything. I'm going to try and finish comfortably and strong, not too far behind, ideally, and make sure I'm in good shape to, carry on and do the other 2 in the series.
And then the last one, Moab, you might give that a little nudge if you've got much left in the tank and go a bit faster, or you're just...
We'll see,
Yeah.
because in between, so Moab is actually a 240 miler. You just throw in that extra little bit.
It was called the Moab 200
Yes,
as well,
exactly.
isn't it?
Now it's changed
but
to
you
the
just
Moab
get
240.
They've called it the...
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. But so you've got a little bit more time to finish that. But I think in relation to, say, Tour des Géants or Trans-Pyrénées, it's less mountainous, but there's altitude to deal with and a few other things. So I will start maybe making some preparations and actually looking at the course details and maybe seeing if I can get some crew.
Yeah, so actually it's training in Singapore, we struggle because we don't have the hills, but if they're not, I mean, if the elevation in Taupo, you're quite high up, but the actual elevation of the course isn't.
Elevation in Tahoe, you mean?
Lake Tahoe,
Yeah.
Tahoe, not Tahoe. But so the Tahoe race it's literally around the lake, isn't it?
Yes.
And I suppose it's got to be reasonably flat with that. I mean,
it's got reasonable amount of elevation, but not a huge amount, not like you would in Tour des Géants.
not Tour des Géants or UTMB.
But the elevation will be an issue.
Yeah.
But elevation's never really bothered me that much, and I do have an altitude tent if I want to use it.
Oh, really? Where?
Yeah.
Here in
At
Singapore,
home.
but
Yeah,
in your house.
yeah.
Have you got how big is it? Can you ride a bike inside it? Or?
No. So the tent itself actually fits over the bed.
So you sleep as though
You
you're
sleep in it.
There you go.
But yes, I'll have to do some negotiation with Roberto.
It's not very romantic, is it?
No, but then also it's like you'd have to sleep in it for, I reckon, to get some good gains, at least 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
So, but the treadmill we have here goes up to a 40% incline.
Okay.
So that's good hiking training. And you can just keep
You
going
can
and
still
going
work.
and
Why
going.
don't you? Can you put your laptop
Yeah.
on there? Maybe not.
not
But you can
quite,
still
but
sell
I can-
people
yeah.
shit while you're on it. You're
No,
like,
no,
yeah,
no.
that's good. Yeah, buy that.
I would do that, yeah. I'd do my secret training, I think, not actually while the shop is open.
And so training-wise, you're just looking to mainly flat training, but long distance and just a lot of hiking. You think for?
Yeah, I think flat is a bit of a misnomer because there's still elevation and you're still going to be hiking up stuff. I mean, they don't think that's so much there, but here we are flat.
Yeah,
so
but you're not going to be flying up to
definitely-
Hong Kong every weekend to get your elevation or up to Malaysia
no,
to
I
do
couldn't
it.
do
You
that.
just-
I've got
just-
too many other things going on as well, so I don't think that's going to happen.
And from a nutrition perspective, actually, I've been having a low carb, high fat diet for pretty much 2 years now, and I was
Yeah.
planning to do it anyway. And then you were like, oh, I'm trying it as well.
Yeah.
Like you're one of the inspirations in doing it. But
Yeah.
how do you think about nutrition nowadays? What are you doing, and what are you thinking about when you come to the trifecta or the triple crown, whatever it's called?
Yeah, so I'm going to try and make things as easy as I can for myself. So, eat what I can. So train myself to eat what I can that's going to be at the checkpoints also, because it makes a big difference when you can come in and eat something and not worry too much about, my stomach's going to go crazy. I can't have this, I can't have that, etc.
Yeah.
So I still have to be careful. There are things that my body doesn't react well to. But I found... So Tailwind is a sponsor, yay, of the Triple Crown series.
Oh, is it? Cool.
Yeah. But the other things, so like, peanut butter. So we have yum butter, which I really like.
I really like that.
Yeah?
The one I got, that's the almond,
Yes,
there's the almond
yes.
nut butter one. It's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah. So I really like that stuff. And just a little bit more real food. So I've actually made a pledge almost, not quite a pledge, but I've said that I'm going to try and eat more green stuff because I don't eat a lot of vegetables in general.
Do you not?
No, I don't. I'm just really bad. I like meat a lot.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's doing me any detriment
Yeah.
eating a lot of meat. But
Do you take supplements? Do you...
not a huge amount, no. I take something called Good Green Stuff.
Yeah, the news, is it
New
Zest?
Zest,
Yeah,
yeah.
I had a couple of trial ones. I
Yeah.
met the guy who runs it, and
Yeah,
I had a couple of
Scott,
trial ones.
yeah.
It's pretty good, yeah.
I like the Good Green Stuff because, like I said, I don't take a lot of vegetables or
Yeah.
anything. And sometimes for me, the time is too tight to, make fresh food all the time.
Yeah.
And I get home and I'm just too tired and I'll just, pick something from the hawker center. But Good Green Stuff, it's got, your full serving of 5 a day in there. There's 75 different ingredients, and I just take 1 sachet a day, and I feel quite virtuous with that.
Yeah.
And then I think, okay, anything else is, a bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beetroot. So I've been taking beetroot powder for years, and I really like it, and I think it does have some benefits to endurance. And now we've got, these new beetroot juice concentrates that really make it a lot more efficient. So yeah, just really stuff like that. Not a huge amount, just making sure my recovery drink is spot on. The Tailwind Rebuild is pretty good.
Yeah.
And balanced diet. If I
Yeah.
can. Balance in favor of bacon.
I could eat bacon every single
Yeah,
day. I pretty
right.
much do. Very cool, Jeri. So a few, one thing I'm really keen to talk about is like on the professional side, like business side. We got a few minutes, but just obviously we're sitting in your cool store here. But what was your career before? You studied physical education and then didn't you work in publishing? Didn't you work in like fashion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, started as a PE teacher. I did that for a year before I left to do my master's. And after I finished my master's, I worked in the UK for some years when I was married. And that was kind of not random, but it was more in the teaching field at first because that was what my qualifications were in. And then I did a few other things and kind of randomly got into fashion there, just high street fashion, managing a store. And then my sister was the one who properly got me into fashion after that. So she was working in Singapore and she said, I'm going to come to Milan and Paris, and because you're working in London or in the UK, it's much cheaper to fly over from there than from Singapore. So I've, got them to let you come as my photographer. And I was like, yay! Except that I wasn't a photographer. So it's a very, very steep learning curve with, right from the beginning of Milan and Paris Fashion Week. And we had so much fun. It was hilarious, but some of the stories we could tell, just like, you can imagine I'm shooting away and I forgot to take the lens cap off or, all sorts. And she's like, okay, you've got 3 days to practice, and our first proper shoot is with Sir Paul Smith. I'm just like, what? It was so funny. So when I moved back to Singapore, she introduced me to a few people. I started with some wardrobe styling, fashion styling for magazines, and some photography, and then was offered a job in publishing as a fashion editor, fashion director for one of the magazines. And so that was how, I kind of got into it, and it was fun for a bit because it was very different to what I expected I was going to do.
I think it's hilarious that you worked in fashion. Now you just see in singlets and trail runners,
I know,
or
I
like
love
OFOs
it.
all
Yeah.
the time.
No, it's super good fun. So I really enjoyed it for a while. I think I was doing it for just under 10 years, 8 to 10 years, I think. But it was luxury men's fashion.
Oh, okay.
And so it was more interesting than women's fashion, because women's fashion, to be honest, it's in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
Men's fashion has a kind of some boundaries, unspoken boundaries, where there's the cut of the suit, and within the suit, you can have a lot of creativity, but it's still a suit. Whereas women can literally wear anything, and that actually terrifies me.
Yeah.
I'm just like, there's too much there. I couldn't do that. But,
And so how did you go from, obviously your passion was still running at the time, like making you talk about the Venn diagram of doing what you love, doing what you're good at, and doing what makes you money, and like finding the middle point on that. How did you?
I think it was in the last few years, because I had to travel so much, and it was, I'd been going to fashion weeks twice a year with my sister as her photographer, and then graduating to me being one of the editors also going to fashion week. It was, and everything else to do with the job, it was almost in direct contrast to what I wanted to do with sport. So I'd be going, waking up and running around the Champs-Élysées and Eiffel Tower and around there, up and down the Seine in the morning, and then heading out and seeing high fashion shows, and then we'd have to party all night because that's what the press has to do, and then waking up the next day and going for a run before you start it all over again. And it got to the point where I had to miss some races because I was away for fashion shows or press junkets or whatever it was, and I just thought, this is not what I want to do. And I was getting a little bored with the fashion scene also, and I thought, I really want to do something that I enjoy again, that gives me a challenge. And why not sport? Because it's a growing market here, and I was having trouble getting stuff that I wanted for ultra running. When it's a new sport and you can't find anything locally, and that's kind of where it started. So I just thought, see if I can get X and Y, and then with my contacts and people that I knew, it just kind of grew from there.
And then you started distributing a few products first, and then
so we started with Tailwind. But before I knew it, I had a store. I have a store. And
I remember you talk, because you obviously had the online store, and you're like, I don't know whether to get bricks and mortar. It's a lot of hard work, but then it's just taken off massively, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm so fortunate. We've got the support of the running community here, and more than the running community, we've got Spartan racers, we've got triathletes, and it's really uplifting to know. And one of my objectives for this store, for this company, is to actually try and build the community and grow it.
And interesting, because you said when you first got into triathlons, and you said that it was the community side of it, and triathlons is kind of lost that a little bit. It seems a bit impersonal. Like you turn up and there's like throws of 1,000 bikes, but the trail running community is still. I mean, I was just out on mountain biking around yesterday and saw a few people. Like, hey, there's just a real community vibe, and everyone's just wanting to sort of help each other and be. And it's nice to see that.
And the good thing is, I don't think trail running will lose that sense of community because of the very nature of what we do. It's like you go out there, and I said, I reckon a lot of ultra runners and trail runners in particular are introverts, because you go out there and you could be out there by yourself for hours and hours and not see anyone. We're pretty happy with that. You know, we're just very chilled, and the whole point of doing this is personal challenge. You know, unless you know you're fast enough to gun for a podium or it's an accidental podium, we're all just very chilled, and we're quite happy to stop and chat and you know help people out along the way.
Yeah, it's such a cool community here in Singapore. Really good people. I've got a few quick fire questions for you.
Okay.
What makes you emotional?
Horror movies, they terrify me. Seriously, yeah. Actually, any movie. So I get very, very into things, and I could watch a movie and I'd be squeezing somebody's arm next to me, going, "No, don't!"
And what's the horror movie that gets you most emotional?
I don't know. I don't watch horror movies anymore. No way. I'll get nightmares.
Okay. What movie makes you cry then? What's like what
I love like soppy movies. So what did I see last? What was the one where the guy's paralyzed from the neck down, I think, and is it Me Before You? I think.
Me Before You.
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't.
And
I was thinking of the Stephen Hawking one for
No.
a minute. That was really very
No,
emotional, but I mean,
it was
of course it's
with Amelia from Game of Thrones. You know, the blonde one from
Yeah,
Game
yeah.
of Thrones, and she did a great job, and that made me cry. I was like, oh.
Okay, me and you. just
Me
say.
Before
Me
You.
Before You. Okay. Most inspirational book. I was talked about reading
I
before, and
would
what you're reading at
say
the moment, but
Currently, Endurance.
enjoy it. But
Yes.
I suppose to rephrase the question, what's been the most inspirational book for you? The look back that sort of changed the way you look at life, or look at sport, or either business, or
You know, there's been a few books that I've read along the way, and one, you'll laugh, but one of them was Dave Scott's triathlon training manual.
Oh, really?
And because when I was young, and it was a gift, and I thought, wow, this guy, he's like my idol. I really want to, there's this famous Dave Scott, Mark Allen battle for Ironman championship. And he used to write on his pool boy, like, get Mark Allen, or it's like to inspire himself. And it kept me giggling. So I used to, in that same vein, I used to have bags of sugar and rice that I used to carry in my pack as weight training. And I named them, not after my enemies, but like, some hot movie stars that I thought, right, come on, Hugh, let's go. So yeah, and his methods of training, he just put in so much hard work that it was really, really inspiring.
Interesting. I've written that down because
You're gonna check
doing
it
an
out.
Ironman's on my bucket list for future.
There
So when I
you go.
eventually get around it, not for a few years yet, but name like one of your favourite quotes? Favorite quotes.
Pain is French bread.
Pain is French bread. See, I always hear you say that, and I don't get it whatsoever. So I don't
Seriously.
understand it. No, what is it?
Have
Please
you
explain.
ever been into a bakery
Yeah.
and seen a pain au chocolat?
Yeah.
So pain in French means bread. Right?
Oh, there we go. Sorry.
That's why there's a flying baguette
Pain
out
is
there.
French bread. Oh, got it. I always see you say that. I'm like, okay. Makes sense now. I feel so stupid. Any favourite podcasts that you listen to?
Actually, recently, so I've gone through quite a few of them. I like currently Trail Runner Nation.
Yes.
And Mr. Brown's podcast.
Mr. Brown's podcast.
Yes, so Mr. Brown's not sport related at all. It's a local podcast.
Yeah.
And
As in Singaporean?
Yeah, and every Tuesday, he does Kim Huat reads the news, and it's hilarious because I have to admit this, I don't read the news. I just rely on people to tell me if there's something terrible going on or something I should know. And this is like my version of catching up with
It's like a
the
satirical
news.
version of the news.
It's great because he's Singaporean and he does it with a lot of Singlish and his personal opinions in there as well. So I do get to find out actual news and laugh at the same time. It's only like 10 minutes long. So look forward to that once a week.
Mr. Brown's podcast,
Yeah.
so check it out. So I normally ask people what is the best kit that they've of kit or product or that they've bought for under $100. Given that we're setting your store with just loads of products everywhere, actually, I'm interested in what's your best-selling product for under $100, and then what's your favorite product for under $100.
So the bestseller under $100, we've got two bestsellers. One is Tailwind Nutrition, but it's a product, yes, but you just keep buying that. And the actual product would be the Naked Band. Yeah. So you've got Naked Band,
I've got two,
right?
Yeah,
so exactly. The Naked Band has been, so it's $85, which is maybe a bit pricey for a waistband for sure, but I've had so much fun with it, honestly. I've done 50K trail races and not had to carry my pack because I can stuff everything into... I might look like a dodgem, but you can put everything. I've had 3 stuffed flasks, my poles, my headlamp, my sunglasses, phone, all sorts in there. And if you look at John Ellis, he runs with a Naked Band, and I remember him running with Naked Band. And one very cold year at Hong Kong 100, and we were
he had gloves on, didn't he?
We said he came into the halfway point and checkpoint 5, I think, and we were like, John, you might need to put some clothes on. It's getting very cold now. He was like, yeah, you're right. Put some gloves on. Run off. Yes, he was topless, of course.
Yeah. I vouch for that as well. It's actually one of my favourite bits of kit, and you can basically just have such a light pack on your back, and it actually putting the weight around your waist is works as well.
And the accessibility, I think, helps a lot.
Yeah, and the newer versions are definitely, they've like improved their technology as well, haven't they? Okay, actually we talked about this earlier, like proudest moment, personal and professional, and like you sort of talked about, like for your running career, Tour de Jean, you've got many to speak of, but professionally, like what's been your proudest moment?
It's funny, I was thinking about that, and I don't really feel that I've done anything to be that proud of professionally, honestly, in all the years I've been doing stuff, because I haven't really had like a long career. Like some people would come out of school, enter the teaching profession, or go into banking or be a lawyer or something, and they'd have a good couple of decades at least, or 3 decades of work in that field, and be able to say, yep, that was my proudest moment, when I achieved whatever. And for me, because I've done so much,
changed career a few times, haven't you?
I don't regret it, but at the same time, I think now using all those experiences to find what it is I want to do now, and with this store, I think I'm pretty close to that. Being able to say, yes, we are breaking even, and I think we're contributing to the community as well. That's probably my proudest moment.
Yeah, I felt like I could have answered that for you, because I remember speaking to you saying, it's a big investment to like open up the store, and I've like got to man the store and have to hire a load of people. And
it's terrifying.
But in true Jeri Chua style, you like just signed up for it and then just like work it out after, and it's cool, and it's become like a real big part of the community. So thank you from the community for like having this spot, and thank you for joining the podcast. It's been a pleasure.
No worries.
Really
Delighted.
appreciate it, Jeri, and I wish you all the luck for the Triple Crown. I'm sure you'll smash it.
Thank you.
There's a bit of training to do in the meantime.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Thanks so much, Jeri.
Right on. Thanks, Scott.
Cheers, my dear.
The Endurance Asia Podcast.
And always tell a truthful story if they ever ask. Stop the complaining, cause things ain't that bad.